Cyrus Owen stands frozen on the street outside the Craftsman Guild as the guildmaster, Ro Shordock, kicks him out onto the dirt and declares him officially fired. Ro calls him completely useless, mocking his unique skill, clock user. Even though Cyrus recently repaired a complex royal clock, Ro claims that is the only thing Cyrus is good for, and his presence is just stealing opportunities from real craftsmen. Left with nothing but his tools, Cyrus can only walk home in despair, wondering how his life fell apart. It all started 4 years ago during the ceremony of skill choosing. In the Heimberg Kingdom, every 16-year-old must pray to the god of skills to receive their destiny. Cyrus, a magic tool genius who built a barrier pendant for his sister Alice Owen at age 12, was expected to get an incredible crafting skill. He walked to the temple holding hands with Alice and his beautiful fiancée, Maria Florence. Maria steps up to the giant crystal and a blinding light fills the room. Inside the grand church, the priest gasps as the ancient letters reveal her skill is Saint, a rare Job skill that legally forces the user into that career. Before Cyrus can even congratulate her, high-ranking priests surround Maria and escort her away to serve the church. Next is Alice, and the crystal flashes just as bright. The priest shouts in shock as she receives the job skill, Sage, an incredibly powerful magic path. Immediately, the muscular leader of the Adventurer Guild steps out from the shadows. Since a sage is too valuable to leave unprotected, he takes Alice by the hand and leads her away, leaving Cyrus alone in the crowd. Finally, Cyrus steps up to the crystal and prays for a skill that can match the two girls. His body glows with a massive, multicolored light that shines right out of the building. The priest is stunned, but when he checks the holy book, the ancient letters translate to clock user. It is a completely unique skill, but the priest admits he has absolutely no idea what it actually does. At the Florence mansion, the consequences hit 1 month later. Maria's father, Gros Florence, the wealthy head of the Florence commerce firm, cancels the engagement. He only wanted Cyrus for his magic tool genius, and a useless clockmaker has no value to his business. Though the church is forcing the split, Cyrus promises a crying Maria that he will become the greatest clockmaker in the world and come back for her. At the Owen family home, another month passes, and Alice reveals she is being adopted by the Adventurer Guildmaster. His noble status will protect her from people trying to exploit her sage power. Cyrus knows it is for the best, but it still hurts when she packs her bags and leaves their mother, Serena Owen, and him behind. Cyrus works hard over the next 6 months and discovers the hidden potential of his clock user skill inside the guild workshop. He develops clock appraisal to scan internal mechanisms, clock storage to keep parts in a pocket dimension, clock manipulation to wind time back and forth, clock stop to freeze movement, clock detection to sense nearby gears, and clock creation to make temporary replicas. Still inside the workshop, a wealthy client named Earl Beaumont visits Cyrus to pick up a repaired clock. Cyrus uses clock creation to demonstrate his perfect repair technique, deeply impressing the noble. Just then, Cyrus's mother, Serena, runs in to drop off his lunch. She takes one look at the handsome Earl, falls instantly in love, and leaves the next day to work as a live-in maid at his estate. Down a quiet alleyway back in the present day, Cyrus wanders alone. Depressed by his isolation, he uses clock detection to find nearby people and ask for directions. Instead, he overhears 2 thugs plotting to break into the Miranda medicine shop to rob and attack the beautiful owner, Miranda. Realizing they are targeting his close friend, Cyrus freezes in horror. Cyrus peers around a dark alley corner and freezes when he sees a man wearing a city guard uniform planning to rob and attack Miranda at her medicine shop. Realizing that the very people meant to protect the town are the ones behind the plot, Cyrus knows he cannot rely on the authorities. Still, he runs to the local guard station to report the crime, hoping someone will listen. But the moment the officers find out he is an unemployed clockmaker who was recently kicked out of the Craftsman Guild, they mock him and throw him out. Without a job or a useful skill, Cyrus has zero credibility, and the guards assume he is just making up stories. That night, outside Miranda's shop, Cyrus hides in the shadows of the neighboring buildings and waits. Sure enough, the corrupt guard creeps up to the front door and reaches for the lock. Cyrus courageously charges out of the dark, screaming at the top of his lungs to alert the neighborhood. The guard punches Cyrus right in the face, knocking him to the dirt, but the loud shouting successfully wakes up the nearby residents. Realizing he is about to be caught, the guard quickly flips the script, pinning Cyrus to the ground and yelling that he has just caught a serial criminal in the act. The neighbors believe the guard at once, and even Miranda looks at Cyrus with complete horror as he passes out from the pain. 3 days later, in a cramped courtroom, Cyrus stands in heavy chains for a rushed trial. The guard captain, Brutus Bojack, stands at the front and claims Cyrus paid local thugs to clear the streets for his crimes. To make things worse, one of the thugs steps up to the stand and lies, claiming Cyrus hired him to help with the attacks. Cyrus tries to defend himself by explaining he is too poor to hire anyone, but Brutus just sneers and brings out a surprise witness. Cyrus's heart shatters when his ex-fiancée, Maria Florence, walks into the room. Standing at the witness stand, Maria claims she has been secretly sending Cyrus money and letters from the church to support him. Cyrus is completely blindsided because he never received a single copper coin or letter. When he tries to step forward to explain, a young man steps in his way, drawing a sword. This is Raven Crowheart, a famous warrior holding the legendary hero job skill, who is known to be very close to Maria. Devastated, and realizing that the entire town is against him, Cyrus collapses in despair as the judge sentences him to become a criminal slave, destined for the dangerous northern territory of Northfolia. Back in the guard captain's private office, the truth finally comes to light. Brutus and Raven meet in secret, laughing over how easily they framed the poor clockmaker. It turns out Raven knew all along that corrupt church members were stealing Maria's letters and money. He used the theft to convince Maria that Cyrus was a heartless jerk who ignored her kindness, all so he could comfort the heartbroken girl and win her over. Weeks later, at the frozen northern border of Northfolia, Cyrus is dragged into the local adventurer guild. The guild master recognizes his name immediately, but not for a good reason. He reveals that Cyrus's younger sister, Alice Owen, has been complaining to everyone that her brother is a useless freeloading drag on her career. With his own sister turning the local adventurers against him, Cyrus's treatment becomes even more brutal, and he is starved and beaten daily. Deep inside the abyss of the worst dungeon, Cyrus is forced to carry heavy gear for a group of arrogant adventurers. Bored and looking for a cruel laugh, one of the men drags Cyrus to the edge of a bottomless cliff and dangles him over the edge. Cyrus begs for his life, but the cheap fabric of his shirt rips, sending him screaming into the dark depths below. Rather than saving him, the adventurers simply agree to lie and say he slipped, leaving him for dead. Cyrus slowly opens his eyes to find himself tangled in giant spider webs next to an icy underground river, down at the bottom of the cavern. He survived the fall, but he has nothing but a small knife, a metal match, and a flask of water. Before he can even search for a way out, he spots a huge monster with a human face and writhing tentacles, swallowing a giant rock frog whole. Cyrus scrambles into a tiny stone crevice just as a second human-faced monster spots him. The beast thrusts its slimy tentacles into the opening, but the crack is too narrow, and the monster eventually gives up. Inside a cramped stone crevice, 3 agonizing days pass. Trapped and starving, Cyrus tries to distract himself by using clock creation to make mechanical clocks, manipulating their gears to pass the time. In his extreme hunger, he jokes to himself that he wishes he could just stop his own body clock. Desperate, he points his finger at his stomach and activates clock stop. To his absolute shock, the gnawing hunger vanishes in seconds. Realizing his ability actually worked on his internal biology, Cyrus uses clock manipulation to rewind his body's condition back to when he was fully fed and healthy. By keeping his body clock stopped at this perfect moment, he no longer needs food or water to survive. Even better, as he continues to experiment, he discovers his magic has evolved. He can now create and control non-mechanical timekeepers like hourglasses and sundials, proving his once useless skill has finally evolved. Cyrus stares down the terrifying human-faced monster blocking the exit of his cave, knowing this is the perfect chance to test his newly evolved powers. Inside the dark cave, Cyrus focuses his mind and activates clock creation. Instead of summoning a normal clock, he decides to forge something far deadlier, mimicking the enormous sword of a royal knight statue he once saw. He generates the weapon out of solid orichalcon, the strongest metal in existence, right beneath the creature. With a deafening squelch, the giant spear pierces straight through the monster's belly. The beast shrieks in pain and tries to lash out with its tentacles, but Cyrus is safely tucked away in the back of the cavern. He summons several more orichalcon spikes, skewering the monster's throat and head until it stops moving completely. The victory is towering, but creating such high-grade metal drains Cyrus's energy entirely, and he collapses onto the cold stone floor, passing out. Meanwhile, back in the royal capital at the medicine shop, Miranda is busy wiping down the counters when the corrupt guard captain, Brutus Bojack, walks through the door with a fake smile. Brutus has been visiting the shop constantly, trying to get close to her. Since his last attempt to assault Miranda failed, he is planning a much sneakier trap. He offers to help her open a new shop in his family's territory, promising to arrange all the carriage travel himself. What Miranda does not know is that Brutus is working with the hero, Raven Crowheart, and plans to kidnap her the moment she leaves the city. Thinking it might be a nice change of pace, Miranda tells him she will consider the offer, completely unaware she is walking right into a predator's trap. Across the city at the church, the saint, Maria Florence, finishes her daily prayers. The hero, Raven Crowheart, immediately steps up and wraps his arm around her shoulders, playing the part of a caring gentleman. Internally, Raven is laughing at how easy she is to manipulate. Since Cyrus was sent away as a criminal, Maria has been feeling completely isolated, and Raven has used that loneliness to squeeze his way into her heart. Maria is starting to believe Raven is the perfect man, totally blind to the fact that he is a corrupt monster who orchestrated Cyrus's downfall just to claim her for himself. At the Craftsman Guild, the guildmaster, Ro Shortalk, meets with his son, Colin Shortalk. The two share a smug laugh over how easily they kicked Cyrus out of the guild. With Cyrus gone, Ro wants his son to take over the highly prestigious job of maintaining the royal palace's ancient clock. Colin, who possesses a skill called dexterity, boasts that mechanical clocks are simple and that he can easily cover up any mistakes he makes. The greedy father and son plan to use this opportunity to fire all the specialized skill users in the guild, keeping the high-paying jobs and the wealth for themselves. But what the two do not realize is that touching the royal palace's delicate ancient clock is about to lead them straight into a nightmare. Cyrus wakes up to the cold water dripping on his face, back in the worst dungeon. Seeing the giant monster's corpse, he smiles, realizing he actually has a chance to survive. He decides to stay hidden in the cave to train his body and master his skills. Using a metal rod created by his magic, he scratches a training plan onto the stone wall. By studying his abilities, Cyrus maps out his entire system. His sundial powers let him control light and shadow, his water clock allows him to manipulate and even freeze liquids, and his hourglass lets him control sand. Best of all, his body clock skill allows him to completely freeze his hunger and extract his own physical energy into glowing items he calls energy cubes, meaning he can train for months without ever needing a single bite of food. Deep in a distant forest, Cyrus's younger sister, Alice Owen, unleashes a giant fire spell called Flame Nova, in a flash vaporizing a giant black blood grizzly. For 6 months, Alice has been taking on dangerous missions just to send half of her gold back to Cyrus. Her manager thinks Cyrus is a lazy parasite because Alice always insults her brother to hide her true affection, but Alice actually cares for him deeply. 1 week later, at the Adventurer Guild Master's office, Alice drops a heavy bag of gold onto the desk. The Guildmaster, Barthold, looks at her and drops a bombshell. He tells her she does not need to send money anymore because Cyrus was convicted as a rapist and sent to the frozen north as a slave. Alice screams that her brother is innocent, but the worst is yet to come. Barthold unlocks a nearby safe and reveals that he never actually sent any of her gold to Cyrus, keeping it all hidden to protect her. Realizing her adoptive father betrayed her and left her brother to rot, Alice loses control, chanting a devastating spell called Prominence Nova that burns the entire guild building to the ground. Maria is met by 2 priests who inform her that her assistant has been arrested for stealing her funds back at the church. As they explain the crime, Maria's heart stops. The assistant had been siphoning the money Maria thought she was sending to Cyrus, meaning Cyrus never received a single gold coin or letter from her. Horrified, Maria realizes she called Cyrus a liar during the trial when he claimed he never got her help. Desperate for answers, she runs to a private room and confronts Raven, demanding to know the truth. Raven drops his gentle act, laughing in her face as he admits he framed Cyrus just to get her into his bed. He warns her that if she tells anyone, he will have Cyrus killed in the dungeon. Realizing she condemned the man she loved and gave herself to a monster, Maria collapses in despair, forced to submit to Raven to keep Cyrus alive. Cyrus Owen is busy surviving the depths of the worst dungeon, completely unaware that back in the capital, his friend Miranda is walking straight into a trap. At the carriage station, Miranda boards a luxurious carriage sent by the guard captain, Brutus Bojack. The driver is supposed to protect her on her trip, and for the first 2 days, everything goes smoothly. But on the 3rd day, as they pass a thick forest, the driver tells her to hide inside because of bandits. Suddenly, the carriage stops, the door is kicked open, and a rough bandit ties Miranda up. When they drag her outside, she is shocked to see her driver laughing and chatting with the bandits. Miranda realizes the driver set her up, but she holds on to hope, believing Brutus will search for her and save her. Miranda is finally pulled out of a flour-stuffed barrel after 3 miserable days of travel, down in the slum cell. The bandit leader sneers and tells her she has been sold to a client as a slave. Miranda tries to act brave, warning them that a powerful noble is going to rescue her. Right then, a man steps into the dark room, asking if the noble looked like him. Miranda gasps in horror as she stares at Brutus himself. Brutus laughs hysterically at her confusion, mocking her for being so easy to trick. Inside the cell, he admits he handpicked the driver and planned the entire kidnapping. Miranda tries to deny it, bringing up the time Brutus saved her from Cyrus, but Brutus ruins her last hope by revealing the ugly truth. He was the one trying to assault her that day, and Cyrus had actually stepped in to protect her. Laughing at her guilt and despair, Brutus draws a knife, cuts her ropes, and pins her to the floor. At the Beaumont mansion, Cyrus's mother, Serena Owen, is having a miserable time. She realized Earl Beaumont is completely controlled by his 2 wives, and she hates weak men. Frustrated, she packs her bags, quits her maid job, and heads home to find Cyrus. Serena finds a strange family living inside, back at her old home. They reveal that Cyrus was arrested as a serial criminal, and the house was sold off by the state. Stunned, Serena wanders the streets and tries to find a new job. But the news of Cyrus's arrest has spread everywhere, and 6 different shops refuse to hire the mother of a criminal. She is left homeless, jobless, and completely broke. At the royal palace, Colin Shortalk arrives to repair a hulking 2-meter clock for Olivia Lutetia Hallenberg, the grandmother of the king. The clock is highly complex, and Cyrus had been keeping it running with temporary fixes. Colin arrogantly claims Cyrus was just lying to steal money, and he promises to fix it permanently right away. He pulls out Cyrus's custom-adjusted gears and replaces them with cheap steel ones. 3 days later, the clock completely explodes because the high-pressure orichalcum gears crushed the weak steel parts. Ro Shortalk screams at his son for ruining their relationship with the royal family. Back in the guildmaster's office, Ro suspends Colin for a week, but the damage is done. Back at the palace, Olivia brings in a skilled blacksmith to examine the ruined pieces. The blacksmith says the mechanism is far too complex, and only Cyrus knows how to fix it. Olivia immediately orders her guards to find Cyrus, no matter what it takes. Cyrus completes 1 full month of intense training inside the worst dungeon. Using clock manipulation and clock detection, he projects bright light from his sundial out of his cave, mapping the area like a photograph. He spots a vast face monster and uses clock creation to summon intense solar heat, burning the beast to ash in 3 seconds. Having mastered all his goals, including storing 100 energy cube items, Cyrus finally steps out of his safe cave. On the path outside, a pack of face monsters lunges at him. Cyrus easily dodges, cutting them down in a flash with an orichalcum sword. When giant frog monsters try to ambush him from the rocks, his detection skill spots the blood flowing in their bodies. He fires a high-speed water cutter made of sand and water, wiping out 7 frogs right away. Further up the dungeon stairs, Cyrus enters a wide room and is stopped by a strange voice. Out of the shadows floats an elder wraith, a semi-transparent spirit monster. Because the wraith has no blood, shadow, or physical body, Cyrus's detection skill did not warn him. The wraith blasts him with purple fire, but Cyrus blocks it with an orichalcum shield and retaliates with a barrage of light spheres. The wraith collapses, seemingly defeated. By the stairs, Cyrus approaches the fallen monster, but the wraith, without warning, leaps up and begins fusing with his body to possess him. Cyrus summons a burning light sphere next to himself, entering a painful battle of endurance. As his consciousness fades, he desperately swallows an energy cube from his storage. The cube's intense life force acts like poison to the undead wraith, burning it out of his body. Cyrus finishes it off with a final blast of light. Catching his reflection in his sword, he realizes the curse has turned his hair completely white. Cyrus walks out of the dungeon's exit and steps into the warm sunlight for the first time in 3 days, shouting at the top of his lungs in pure joy. The nearby guards and adventurers give him some very weird looks, but he does not care one bit. After 3 days of climbing, he is finally back in the northern frontier territory of Northfolia. This city is built around the colossal abyss known as the Deep Hole, and it is surrounded by towering defensive walls. Before entering the city, Cyrus reaches into his shadow and pulls out his permit. Thanks to his training, his sundial skill has evolved into a pocket dimension where he can store almost anything. He grabs the card, passes through the gates, and heads straight for the local adventurer guild. At the guild counter, Cyrus looks at the receptionist and demands to see the guildmaster, announcing that Cyrus Owen has returned from the bottom of hell. She blinks, realizes who he is, and runs to the back in a panic. Moments later, the local guildmaster, Gareth Coyage, walks out and stares at the heavy steel collar around Cyrus's neck. Cyrus explains that his party members pushed him into the abyss. Right on cue, one of those former party members stands up in the crowd and yells that Cyrus is a liar. Gareth looks down at his reports and notes a major contradiction, pointing out that the party claims Cyrus fled in a panic, yet all their heavy gear was found neatly stacked on the ground. The liar panics, draws his sword, and lunges at Cyrus in a blind rage. But to the newly strengthened Cyrus, the man's movements are painfully slow. He easily grabs the attacker's wrist, twists it until the man screams, and hands him over to the guards for attempted murder. Now that the trash has been cleared, Cyrus sits down with Gareth to explain how he survived the fall by landing in an immense spider web. He explains that his unique skill, Clock User, allowed him to freeze his own body clock to stop his hunger. To prove his story, Cyrus opens his pocket dimension and dumps out the sprawling corpses of monsters no one has ever seen. He pulls out so many beasts that Gareth has to scream at him to stop before they bury the guild hall. After a quick appraisal, Gareth offers him a gigantic sum of 10,000 gold coins for the materials. Cyrus does not hesitate, immediately spending 1,000 gold coins to buy his own freedom and shattering his slave collar with his bare hands. The next morning, back at the guild, Cyrus returns to collect the rest of his earnings. Gareth reveals the final price of the materials is a staggering 18,350 gold coins, a sum so monumental the guild cannot pay it in cash. Instead, Gareth opens a special account and hands Cyrus a pitch-black card made of rare metal. This is the legendary Black Card, reserved only for SSS-Rank adventurers. S-Rank is already the peak of human capability, but when Cyrus places his hands on the guild's strongest testing device, his stats register at S-Rank and beyond, proving he is a walking disaster. Seeing this power, Gareth asks Cyrus to meet the local lord, and Cyrus agrees, realizing a noble's backing is the perfect tool for his upcoming revenge. Inside a carriage on the way to the mansion, Gareth quietly apologizes for ignoring the abuse Cyrus suffered in the past, admitting he prioritized guild profits. Cyrus does not forgive him, but he accepts the truce since they need each other. Inside the reception room of the Northfolia estate, Cyrus is completely unfazed by the fancy decor because of his past as a royal clockmaker. A moment later, Lord Demos Northfolia and his young son Cruz walk in. Cruz is a titanic fan of adventurers and stares at Cyrus with sparkling eyes. Demos gets straight to business and asks to buy information about the deepest parts of the dungeon. Cyrus demands to negotiate as an equal, and Demos willingly agrees, offering 10,000 gold coins for the details. Cyrus accepts the deal, but corrects one major detail, explaining that the abyss he fell into was not actually the deep zone, but merely the start of the middle zone. Demos is stunned. Cyrus then explains the terrifying monsters he fought, including the Elder Wraith that turned his hair white. Impressed, Demos officially clears Cyrus's criminal record within his territory, and drops a huge request, asking him to officially conquer the deepest depths of the deep hole. Defeating the boss will stop the monster outbreaks that threaten the city, and Demos promises unlimited rewards in exchange. But there is a catch. Guild rules state that a solo explorer cannot claim a dungeon clear because no guild staff are strong enough to go down there and verify it. Cyrus needs a party to back up his claims. Cyrus looks at the available fighters, but they are all far too weak to survive the middle depths. At the slave shop, frustrated, he tells the merchant he will train his own partner, demanding someone who is simply obedient and easy to manage. The merchant hesitates, then leads him to the back and introduces a young girl who was forced into slavery because she possesses the forbidden heretic skill. Cyrus stares at the young slave girl, completely horrified by her miserable state. Her clothes are nothing but filthy rags, her hair is a tangled mess, and she is so starved that she looks like a walking skeleton. At the slave shop, the merchant explains that the law requires anyone with the forbidden heretic skill to be treated like garbage. Furious at this cruel system, Cyrus decides on the spot to buy her. The girl reveals her name is Mist Carmine. When she flinches away in fear, Cyrus pulls her into a warm hug and promises to protect her from anyone who would dare to hurt her. The merchant prepares the slave contract magic, explaining that Cyrus just needs to channel magic into a hair from mist on the magic paper. Cyrus pours in his enormous mana, making the paper glow so brightly it blinds the merchant. With the contract mark settled on Mist's neck, the merchant checks Cyrus's adventurer card to process the payment, and nearly passes out when he sees the triple S rank. The merchant bows in absolute terror, and Cyrus leaves the shop with his new companion. Cyrus calls out for a bath to wash off Mist's grime at the Northfolia estate. Demos' young son, Cruz, runs out to greet his hero, and immediately opens the estate doors for them. Inside the large bathroom, Mist hesitantly asks if Cyrus is joining her. Cyrus tells her she is too weak to bathe alone and treats her like a child, guessing she is around 10 years old. But Mist pouts and reveals she is actually 17. Because she was so starved, she just looked like a little girl. Cyrus apologizes and promises he will never use his master commands to take advantage of her. Cyrus uses his clock storage to pull out an energy cube inside the guest room. Mist thinks the glowing square is a joke at first, but when Cyrus gently asks her to trust him, she pops it into her mouth. The cube melts like sweet honey and floods her body with towering life force. In a flash of light, her thin limbs fill out, and her dull hair transforms into glowing blonde locks, revealing her true, stunning beauty. Later that evening, Cyrus decides it is time to set their contract command. Mist braces herself for a cruel order inside the guild. The receptionist looks over the papers and explains that since Mist is a slave, she can only be registered as a limited partner. That is perfectly fine with Cyrus, but as Mist fills out the form, she freezes at the skill section. Cyrus gently squeezes her hand to reassure her, giving her the courage to write down the truth. She whispers to the receptionist that her job skill is heretic. Horrified, the receptionist lets out a loud gasp, screaming the forbidden skill out loud for the entire hall to hear. Abruptly, the noisy tavern section of the guild goes dead silent as every eye locks onto Mist. A stuck-up knight named Lightheart, a proud S-rank adventurer with the Holy Spearman skill, who also works for the church, struts over to demand if the girl is really a dirty heretic. Cyrus steps in front of Mist, mocking the knight and asking if his fancy title is just some new monster name. Enraged, Lightheart demands they step outside to settle this with their weapons. Before things get out of hand, the Northfolia Guildmaster, Gareth Koyage, steps between them to propose a formal duel to settle the dispute. Out in the training grounds, a crowd of curious adventurers gathers to watch the fight. Lightheart demands that Mist's registration be cancelled if he wins, while Cyrus simply wants the knight to stay far away from his companion. The moment Gareth shouts for them to start, Lightheart lunges forward with his spear, moving so fast that ordinary eyes cannot even track him. But to Cyrus, who survived the horrors of the deep hole, the speed is practically laughing material. Cyrus easily slips past the point of the spear, activates clock creation to summon a sword made of solid orichalcum, and chops the spear in half. With a single powerful kick, Cyrus shatters the knight's armor and sends him flying into the stone wall, knocking him out cold. While the crowd stands frozen in complete disbelief, Gareth steps forward and loudly declares Cyrus the winner. The guildmaster then drops a giant truth bomb, announcing that Cyrus is the first person to ever return from the deep layers of the worst dungeon, making him a legendary SSS-Rank adventurer. The entire training ground explodes into cheers, praising the white-haired hero. Knowing that Gareth is just using this victory to lower the influence of the church, Cyrus scoops Mist into his arms and dashes out of the area before the crowd can swarm them. Cyrus sets Mist back on her feet, only to be approached by a brown-skinned woman with a sharp gaze down a quiet alleyway. She introduces herself as Kareem Elementius, an S-rank adventurer who was actually in the same party as Lightheart. Instead of looking for revenge, Kareem reveals she wants to join Cyrus's party because she is disgusted by Lightheart's attitude. She also mentions a strange custom from her desert homeland of Aelries, proudly declaring that she travels to find strong men so she can have their babies. As Mist frantically protests this sudden proposal, Cyrus turns bright red and tells Kareem they will finish this discussion tomorrow. Within the Craftsman Guild office, back in the capital, the Craftsman Guild Master, Ro Shorthawk, is throwing a hulking tantrum. Because of his son's failure with the royal clock, nobles are canceling their contracts left and right. To make matters worse, a large group of experienced professional craftsmen storm into the room, demanding better pay and complaining about how Ro forces them to fix the mistakes of cheap, untrained rookies. When Ro snaps and screams that their specialized skills are useless and easily replaced, the leader of the craftsmen punches Ro square in the face. The entire group quits on the spot, leaving Ro alone with a bruised face, foolishly plotting to drag Cyrus back to apologize for their mess. Inside a private guild room, Cyrus, Mist, and Kareem sit down to negotiate. Kareem explains the 3 major benefits she brings to the table, including her survival skills, her frontline sword abilities to balance their party, and her ability to protect Mist from the hostile followers of the Skill Selection Church. Feeling touched by Kareem's desire to stand against discrimination, Mist asks Cyrus to trust her, and Cyrus agrees to let Kareem join. Mist happily suggests they name their group the Wheel of Fate, and the 3 adventurers officially register the new party. Cyrus stays up late working on a special project back at the Northfolia estate. Drawing on his childhood knowledge as a magic tool inventor, he designs a weapon that has long been abandoned by modern soldiers, a magical gun. Channeling his clock creation skill, he materializes a high-tech firearm made of a heavy orichalcum alloy, naming the weapon Misteltine. The gun is capable of firing rapid light magic bullets at extreme speeds. Mist, who was watching nearby, is completely stunned that her master can create such a legendary weapon from thin air in a matter of seconds, begging him to never show this power to outsiders. By the city gates, the party prepares to head out for their first hunt, when a familiar voice calls out. Cyrus turns around to see his younger sister, Alice Owen, running toward him with tears streaming down her face. She cries out in relief, explaining how she rushed to the frontier to save him, only to be told he was dead. Instead of a happy reunion, Cyrus in an instant summons his orichalcum sword and points the sharp blade right at her throat. He reminds her of how she spread rumors calling him useless, leaving her weeping on the dirt as he coldly tells her that he never wants to see her face again. Alice cries in the dirt as Cyrus coldly turns his back on her, walking away without a single shred of regret. She tries to scramble after him, but Mist blocks her path, begging the crying girl to give Cyrus some space to process everything. Cyrus pulls Mist close and sternly warns Alice to stay away before he completely loses his temper, leaving his sister sobbing alone in the dust. As the party heads out, Kareem asks Cyrus what he plans to do next. Cyrus brushes it off, stating they are sticking to the plan to test their teamwork, though he quickly warns Kareem that he will be kicked out of the party if he drags them down. Outside the city walls, the group arrives at a beginner training grassland to practice their basic skills. Kareem steps forward to teach them how to observe their surroundings, pointing out that the lush green grass means local monsters are well fed and less likely to attack on sight. Cyrus asks if they even need to do this when he has detection skills, but Kareem explains that magic cannot reveal everything, like how a tiny hidden animal might attract bigger predators. To prove his point, Kareem hurls a small stone into the grass and knocks out a wild rabbit. He warns them that even small creatures can carry deadly poison, meaning they must never let their guard down. Just then, Cyrus senses a threat using his clock detection skill. He quickly activates clock creation to summon his magical gun, Mistletoe, and fires a single shot. The bullet flies 20 meters, within moments killing a venomous snake that was silently creeping toward them. While Cyrus smirks at his own precision, Kareem gets annoyed that his lesson was ruined by magic and bans Cyrus from using any skills for the rest of their basic training. Cyrus reluctantly agrees, and Kareem sends him and Mist off to hunt small animals, using only their natural senses. Mist gathers her courage to ask Cyrus about his sister deep in the grassland. With a heavy heart, Cyrus explains how Alice spread terrible rumors, calling him a useless trash craftsman back when he was a criminal slave. Those lies made other adventurers beat and abuse him daily, culminating in them throwing him down the deep hole. Cyrus admits he holds Alice responsible for all his suffering and cannot forgive her, though he throws a rock to crush a rabbit's skull just to vent his lingering anger. When Mist asks if he secretly wants to make peace, Cyrus admits he has no idea, prompting Mist to squeeze his hand and promise to stand by his side no matter what. Later, the training moves into the forest, where Mist begins practicing her tracking first. While she is focused on the path ahead, Cyrus quietly steps behind Kareem and presses the cold barrel of Mistletoe against his back. Cyrus demands to know Kareem's true motive for joining their party, refusing to believe it is just simple sympathy. Kareem does not panic, calmly explaining that he wants Cyrus to help him change the world. He calls Cyrus a naive kid playing the victim, but says that a soft-hearted kid with vast power is exactly what is needed to destroy a corrupt system where skills dictate human lives. Appreciating the honesty, Cyrus lowers his gun and finally accepts Kareem as a true ally. Deep in the woods, the party faces their first real challenge when a colossal killer bear blocks their path. Kareem charges forward, drawing the monster's attention and easily dodging its razor-sharp claws with his superior S-rank speed. Cyrus provides backup from a distance, firing heavy rubber bullets from Mistletoe to stagger the beast and throw it off balance. Once the bear is disoriented, Mist steps up and unleashes her powerful light magic, Shine Lance, which pierces the monster's chest and pins it to the dirt. Cyrus immediately hugs and praises Mist, making her blush intensely, while Kareem rolls his eyes at the sweet atmosphere. Back in the capital, inside the royal palace, the corrupt hero Blackheart and the Saint Maria are summoned before the king. The king reveals that his grandmother, Olivia, had her favorite clock ruined by the Craftsman Guild, and the ensuing investigation exposed the framing of Cyrus. Because Cyrus was the only one who could fix the royal clock, their conspiracy against him is treated as an attack on the royal family itself. The king shows them the beaten body of the guard captain, Brutus Bojack, who has been set up to take the fall for all the crimes. Blackheart is stripped of his easy life and ordered to fight on the front lines against the Rustguard Empire, while Maria is sentenced to lifelong exile at a dangerous sanctuary near the Dragon's territory. At the Craftsman Guild, the guild master Ro Shortalk receives a royal decree that destroys his entire life. The king has stripped Ro of his title, cancelled the guild's royal funding, and demanded an immense debt for the damaged clock. When Ro tries to blame Cyrus for the disaster, a young worker quits on the spot and mocks him, revealing that most of the staff are leaving due to the terrible working conditions. Meanwhile, in the workshop, Ro's son Colin is forced to work sleeplessly to manufacture basic parts because all the skilled craftsmen have already abandoned the guild. With his father ousted, Colin's special privileges are gone, leaving him on the brink of being fired and thrown out onto the street. Back in the palace, Olivia discusses the guild's collapse with her spy maid, planning to replace it with a new association that will welcome Cyrus back to the capital. Olivia admits she went to such extremes because the clock represents her youth, and Cyrus is the only one who can fix it. it. However, her grand plans hit a sprawling roadblock the very next day when she receives a message from Northfolia. The report reveals that Cyrus has conquered the deepest floors of the deep hole and officially become a SSS rank adventurer, leaving Olivia completely overwhelmed by how much harder it will be to bring him home. Cyrus steps into the damp, dark mouth of the deep hole, leading his party into the notorious abyss dungeon of Northfolia. Together with the desert swordsman Karim Elementius and the former slave girl Mist Carmine, they want to test their teamwork and help Mist gain some experience. Karim takes the lead as they navigate the narrow, winding stone pathways inside the first floor. She explains that this area is crawling with skeletons, but before they can even settle in, 3 bony monsters creep around a corner. Karim immediately charges forward and slashes their legs, knocking them down. Cyrus raises his magic gun, Mistletoe, and fires a heavy round to shatter the knee of the 3rd skeleton. With the monsters immobilized, Mist steps forward and casts her light magic, Shine Lance, releasing a bright burst that at once turns the skeletons into harmless dust. Cyrus uses his clock detection skill and senses a gigantic horde of 20 skeletons gathering just ahead by the next turn. Karim realizes that is way too many for a beginner like Mist to handle, but Cyrus tells her to stand back. He uses his clock creation skill to in seconds summon a pocket watch in the palm of his hand. Explaining that anything resembling a clock is incredibly fast to make, he pulls the top ring like a grenade pin, winds it up, and hurls it around the corner. A monumental explosion rocks the stone walls, completely vaporizing the monsters. Karim is shocked and immediately bans Cyrus from ever throwing watch bombs while she is fighting in the front line. Down on the 2nd floor, the dungeon opens up into a titanic, wide cave system with deep, pitch-black chasms cutting through the floor. Karim warns them to watch their step because one slip means falling into the endless abyss. All at once, the party is ambushed by a group of monsters, including a skeleton, a vampire bat, and a black goblin wielding a giant scythe. Cyrus acts quickly, shooting down the bat to keep their airspace clear. Karim disarms the goblin with a swift slice, allowing Mist to finish the beast off with a rapid burst of light magic. Mist even handles a skeleton in close combat, using her staff to smash its skull. While they gather their breath, Cyrus keeps looking back, feeling a strange presence using his clock detection skill. Right as another stray bat flies out from the shadows to sneak up on Mist, a fire arrow shoots out from the dark, incinerating the monster in a flash. Alice Owen, Cyrus's estranged younger sister, steps out from behind a boulder. She nervously claims that she just happened to be passing by, and then she quickly runs back into the shadows. Alice continues to stalk them, popping out 17 times to destroy monsters before Mist can even react over the next few hours. Cyrus finally loses his temper when she jumps out to slice a goblin with water magic. He barks at her to stop, demands to know why she is ignoring his warnings, and tells her she is completely ruining their training. Alice bursts into tears, explaining that she only wanted to show she could be useful so he would forgive her. Cyrus coldly tells her that her help is a nuisance and orders her to stay away, leaving Alice to run off weeping. Further down the path, Alice wanders aimlessly through the cavern, completely heartbroken and desperate. She realizes her brother truly hates her and begins to wonder how she can ever make him understand her guilt. Staring down into the bottomless abyss, she decides that the only way to understand his pain is to experience what he did when he fell. Without hesitation, she takes a step forward and drops straight into the dark void. Meanwhile, Karim feels uneasy and tells Cyrus that Alice looked dangerously unstable. Agreeing that they need to make sure she does not cause more trouble, the party backtracks. They spot Alice right at the edge of the chasm, and to Cyrus's horror, she steps off into the air. Cyrus sprints forward, uses clock creation to summon a grappling hook gun, and dives straight over the edge after her. He grabs Alice in midair, shoots a metal spike into the stone wall, and swings them both safely back onto the solid ground of the cavern floor. Once they land, Cyrus shakes Alice by the shoulders, screaming at her for being so incredibly foolish. Alice cries, saying she thought this was the only way to earn his forgiveness. Cyrus breaks down in tears himself, admitting that while he is too stubborn to forgive her right now, he does not want her to die because they are still family. He promises her that if she simply waits for him to heal, he will eventually come to find her. Alice weeps with relief, realizing they have a path to patch things up. As they sit down to rest, Alice wipes her tears and smiles at her brother. But the moment Cyrus sees her smile, his mind flashes back to his dark past, remembering the horrific abuse, insults, and violence he suffered from other adventurers because of her rumors. The memory hits him like a physical blow, causing him to collapse, vomit on the floor, and tremble in absolute terror when Alice tries to get close. Looking at his shaking body, Karim explains that Cyrus is suffering from severe adventurer trauma, a mental scar that can paralyze a person for life. She warns that trying to force him to get used to Alice might only make the panic attacks worse. Mist remembers that Cyrus bought her as a slave because he could not trust free people, and she suggests a radical idea. If Alice becomes Cyrus's slave through a magic contract, it might trick his mind into feeling safe around her. Alice surprisingly loves the idea and reveals she has the perfect excuse to become a criminal slave. She admits that before leaving the capital, she discovered the adventurer guildmaster, Barthold, had been stealing the money she sent to Cyrus. Enraged, she blew up the guild building, leaving Barthold badly injured before she fled to Northolia. Cyrus is absolutely dumbfounded by her extreme behavior and agrees that locking her up as his personal slave is the only way to keep her from blowing up anything else. Demos Northolia holds his head in his hands, completely stressed by Cyrus's request, at the Lord's estate in Northolia. As the Lord, he knows that harboring a high-ranking criminal like Alice is a huge political risk, but he also knows he cannot afford to anger a SSS rank adventurer like Cyrus. Ultimately, Demos agrees to handle the paperwork, officially transferring Alice's custody to Cyrus as a criminal slave. Later that night, in Cyrus's guest room, Mist knocks on the door and steps inside with a guilty look. She confesses that she knows a way to cure his mental trauma using her rare regeneration magic. However, she admits she hid this because she feared the magic would wipe away all of his recent memories, including his time spent with her. Tears run down her face as she apologizes for being selfish. Cyrus wraps his arms around her, promising that he will fight the magic to keep his memories of her, and gently asks her to cast the spell. Mist wipes her tears and casts her ultimate spell, Resurrection. A warm, golden light fills the bedroom, flowing directly into Cyrus's body to heal his fractured mind. As the magic touches his soul, Cyrus resists the memory-wiping side effect, focusing entirely on his bond with Mist. Sensing his struggle, Mist redirects the magical flow to protect his thoughts, and after 10 minutes of intense focus, the light fades away. Cyrus opens his eyes, smiles warmly at Mist to prove he still remembers her, and confirms that his mind is completely healed. Cyrus watches a magic circle sink into Alice Owen's neck, sealing her contract as his criminal slave. At the estate, the process is quick and official, overseen by a local slave merchant. With the brand active, Cyrus gives Alice two simple commands: learn common sense and be honest. Thanks to the honesty command, Alice immediately blurs out that she actually wants to marry him, admitting she even changed her family name to find a noble marriage loophole. While Cyrus reels in disbelief, Mist Carmine gets incredibly jealous and clings to his arm, while Kareem Elementius and young Cruz Northolia tease him about his unexpected charm. On the street, the corrupt guard captain Brutus Bojack is chained to a post, beaten bloody by angry citizens for his many crimes. Refusing to repent, Brutus blames the kingdom and curses Cyrus for his downfall. Out of nowhere, Cyrus's homeless mother, Serena Owen, steps out of the crowd and beats him relentlessly with a heavy wooden club, crying out that he framed her innocent son. Brutus dies under the blows, his soul carrying a burning hatred that flows directly into a distant dungeon. Deep in the dungeon, the dark energy rebuilds his soul into a giant monster known as a tyrant, a 2-meter-tall beast with rotting flesh and huge arms that still bears Brutus's face, groaning Cyrus's name. Inside the carriage, Kareem explains that they are heading to a settlement half a day's travel from Northolia to handle a monster outbreak. To pass the time, Alice uses her sage skill to turn cheap potions and Cyrus's energy cubes into top-grade healing liquid. Since Cyrus's clock storage skill only accepts clay pots and not glass, Alice creates custom ceramic jars out of local dirt. Watching Alice work, Mist feels deeply insecure about her own flat chest compared to Alice and Kareem, trying to compete for Cyrus's attention by asking him weird questions about flatlands and mountains. Within the house, the village chief explains that a pack of enormous hellhounds has been acting strangely, leaving the forest to brutally tear apart local beasts, including a powerful killer bear. While walking back to the carriage, Cyrus thanks Kareem for her constant guidance and calls her a true companion, making the desert warrior blush bright red. Down the street, the warm moment is cut short by a loud argument breaking out at the local general store. The shopkeeper's son, a retired adventurer who recognizes Cyrus's legendary strength, refuses to sell anything to Mist because of her heretic job class, fearing the wrath of the skill selection church. By the lodging, the chief points them toward a nice house, but Cyrus notices a rotting, run-down shack at the edge of the village. The chief nervously tries to steer them away, claiming a strange hermit lives there, which only makes the party suspicious. By the door, Cyrus knocks anyway, only for the door to open and reveal his long-lost friend, Miranda. The young woman falls to her knees in tears, begging for forgiveness, as Cyrus notices a slave collar locked around her neck. Back inside the shack, a trembling Miranda explains that Brutus had kidnapped her and forced her into slavery before selling her to bandits. Eventually, the village elders bought her as a shared slave to keep the young men from leaving the settlement. Traumatized and broken, Miranda desperately begs Cyrus to buy her, even offering to endure physical abuse just to escape. Cyrus gently refuses her offer and leaves the shack to let her calm down. Outside, the chief begs Cyrus not to take her, explaining that their defense force will fall apart without her. Cyrus offers a compromise, promising to give up their quest reward and introduce a legitimate slave merchant from Northfolia, so the village can buy a debt-bound helper instead. The chief agrees to discuss it with the elders, leaving Cyrus determined to finish the hunt and rescue his old friend. Cyrus rushes out of the village early in the morning to begin the hunt, but he has no idea that his childhood friend Miranda is watching him from the shadows. Outside the rented house, the group prepares to leave. Alice is still half asleep and complaining about the early hour, but Cyrus insists they need every minute to investigate the forest. Panicked by the thought that Cyrus is abandoning her forever, Miranda runs blindly into the dangerous woods after them. Cyrus uses clock detection to lead the party straight toward the strongest magic signatures, deep in the forest. They quickly come across a pack of abnormally large, muscular hellhounds feeding on the corpse of a killer bear. Kareem charges in first, decapitating a beast with a single swing of his sword. Cyrus follows up by firing his magic gun Mistletoe, putting bullets through the foreheads of several monsters. Alice finishes the rest of the pack by casting a heavy wind magic spell called Air Pressure, crushing the remaining beasts under immense force. Standing over the fallen monsters, Alice uses her alchemy skills to inspect the strangely bloated corpses. She pours a custom worm-expelling liquid onto the head of one beast, and a swarm of disgusting, worm-like parasites immediately wiggles out of the bullet hole. The group notices the parasites recoiling in terror from Mist, who is just standing nearby. Mist releases a small pulse of her raw holy magic, and the light right away dissolves the writhing pests, proving her magic is their ultimate weakness. Further in the woods, the group follows the trail of the parasites to their breeding ground. They discover a grotesque scene centered around a giant plant monster resembling a hell plant. The plant produces rotten fruits infested with tiny bugs, which smaller monsters eat, causing them to undergo rapid muscle growth and go mad with hunger. These mutated beasts are then lured back by the sweet scent of the plant, only to be trapped in its vines and absorbed as food. This constant cycle of energy allows the plant to rapidly clone itself and spread the infection. Before the monsters can notice them, the party coordinates a towering preemptive strike. Kareem activates his flame sword dance skill, coating his blades in fire to slice through the vines and burn the parasites. Alice unleashes a giant flame pillar spell, turning several giant plants to ash in seconds, while Mist fires a holy ray magic attack to purify the remaining pests. To clean up the rest, Cyrus uses clock creation to summon a hulking fire thrower named Flamberge. He unleashes a torrent of sticky fuel that burns the plants to the ground, carefully deleting the magical fuel afterward to prevent a vast forest fire. Along the path, the quiet forest is in an instant pierced by a horrifying scream. Recognizing the voice, Cyrus sprints ahead with his gun drawn and finds two hellhounds tearing into a human body. He kills both beasts in an instant, but he is horrified to find Miranda lying on the ground, missing an arm, and covered in fatal wounds. Clutching her dying body, Cyrus refuses to let his old friend go and asks Mist to use her special magic to bring Miranda back from the dead. Under the trees, a tense argument breaks out. Alice warns that raising the dead is a forbidden taboo, as it usually results in the creation of a brainless undead monster. Kareem agrees, stating the risk is too high, but Cyrus begs them to let him try, arguing that mastering this technique could serve as a vital trump card for their future exploration of the Deep Hole dungeon. Seeing his desperation, Kareem and Alice step away to guard the perimeter, leaving Cyrus and Mist alone to attempt the impossible. By the clearing, the two combine their unique abilities. Cyrus uses clock manipulation to treat Miranda's body like a physical clock, reversing the flow of time to perfectly repair her torn flesh. Meanwhile, Mist uses her regeneration magic to search the sky for Miranda's departing soul, pulling it back down and anchoring it inside the restored body. The spell succeeds, but the extreme effort drains Mist completely, causing her to collapse into Cyrus's arms. Moments later, Miranda slowly opens her eyes, but the reunion is cut short. Alice returns to inspect her and reveals that Miranda's internal magic flows are completely disconnected, meaning she is technically an undead flesh golem. Recognizing her state, a tearful Miranda apologizes for running after them and not trusting Cyrus. She begs Mist to end her suffering, and Mist complies by casting a holy purification spell called Holy Breath, letting Miranda's soul ascend to heaven in peace as she leaves her final words of comfort to Cyrus. Back at the village, Cyrus stores Miranda's body in his inventory to bury her in the capital and tells the village chief about her tragic death. True to his word, Cyrus gives up the quest rewards to buy Miranda's freedom posthumously and promises to introduce a proper merchant to the village. Inside the carriage, the group begins the journey back to Northfolia. During the ride, Cyrus declares that he will no longer just react to tragedies, deciding to use his power to destroy the corrupt skill selection church and change this cruel world for good. Cyrus marches straight into the Lord's estate in Northfolia, but instead of demanding another favor, he bows deeply and apologizes to Deimos for his past behavior. The Lord is completely taken aback by this sudden change of heart, but he happily accepts the apology and agrees to a fresh start. With the air cleared, Cyrus proposes a colossal deal. He wants to destroy the skill selection church to end the cruel system of skill-based discrimination, and he is willing to offer his SSS rank power to Deimos to make it happen. Cyrus even promises to hand over all the valuable materials he gathers from the worst dungeon to seal the pact. Deimos smiles and reveals that he has his own reasons for wanting to take down the church. Inside the parlor, when Deimos was younger, he was given a simple mental arithmetic skill, which left him helpless when a monster outbreak wiped out his entire family. Years later, when his son Cruz turned 16, the church priests labeled the boy's skill as a servant of pleasure and suggested selling him to shady people. Deimos was furious, realizing that the church uses these arbitrary skill translations to control and ruin lives. He wants to help Cyrus build a new, independent nation in Northfolia, free from the church's grip, and he wants Cyrus to become its founding hero. To explain how this is possible, Deimos reveals a shocking history about the world's creation. The world was made by a creator god who left it in the care of 4 other deities, including the skill selection god. Over time, the skill selection church expanded by giving out skills and destroying the original language, forcing everyone to use their modern tongue. Deimos points out that the neighboring Rustgard Empire was recognized as a nation simply because their demon king possessed absolute power. If Cyrus can clear the worst dungeon, his legendary strength will force the surrounding kingdoms to recognize Northfolia as a sovereign nation. But the most shocking secret Deimos reveals is about the skills themselves. Because only the church priests can read the ancient language, they deliberately mistranslate skills to oppress their enemies. Deimos hired specialists to translate their true skills, revealing that Cruz's skill was actually Moonreader, not a servant of pleasure. He then turns to Mist and tells her that her feared heretic skill actually translates to Saintly Great Person, a holy healer second only to the Earth Mother Goddess. Overwhelmed with relief, Mist bursts into tears, realizing she was never cursed, and Cyrus gently holds her to comfort her. Once Mist calms down, Deimos tells Cyrus the truth about his own clock user skill. The name actually translates to Holy Song User, a title referring to the creator god's helper during the 7 days of creation. The church only called it clock user because their main cathedral features a famous clock tower known as the Holy Song, and the priests assumed the skill was for a simple clock technician. This explains why Cyrus's clock magic is so godlike and versatile. Hearing this, Cyrus realizes his power is far greater than he ever imagined, though he jokingly tells the Lord he is not ready to become royalty just yet. Later that day, at the Adventurer Guild, the group meets with Guildmaster Gareth Koyage to discuss a new threat. Gareth explains that mutated monsters, infected with parasitic worms, are spreading rapidly through the middle floors of the worst dungeon. These parasites make the beasts incredibly aggressive and hungry, and Cyrus in an instant recognizes them as the same worms that killed Miranda. The situation is extremely urgent because the Skill Selection Church is trying to send its own forces to clear the anomaly, which would give them total control over the local guild. Gareth asks the Wheel of Fate to resolve the crisis before the church can interfere. While they discuss the mission, Gareth also addresses the past by bringing forward the female receptionist who had exposed Mist's heretic status to the public. Both Gareth and the receptionist bow to apologize for the incident, offering to let Cyrus decide her punishment. Cyrus refuses to seek petty revenge, leaving the decision to Mist, who says she only needs Cyrus's protection and has no interest in vengeance. The receptionist is let off with a strict warning and retraining, allowing everyone to focus on the dangerous task ahead. Cyrus spends the night preparing his magic and upgrading his weapons for the long journey back at the inn. As he works, Mist knocks on his door and enters the room, sitting beside him on the bed to talk. She thanks him for always believing in her, and Cyrus expresses his own gratitude, admitting that meeting her saved him when he was at his lowest. They share a quiet, tender moment of connection, knowing that tomorrow they must dive into the deepest, most dangerous levels of the worst dungeon. Cyrus pulls Mist into a tight hug and confesses his love, promising to protect her forever. Mist is completely overwhelmed with joy, blushing red as she asks to go on a real date with him, just like normal lovers. Cyrus smiles and kisses her cheek, telling her that being a slave changes nothing and that he will take her out as many times as she wants. Mist returns to her room with a bright smile, leaving Cyrus with a renewed determination to protect his new happiness. The next morning, outside the inn, the Wheel of Fate gathers for their grand descent into the worst dungeon. Kareem flexes her muscles, boasting that she is in peak condition, while Alice promises she can brew any potion they might need. Mist stands close to Cyrus, ready to follow him anywhere, and with a unified shout, the party steps forward to investigate the mutated monsters. Inside the worst dungeon, they quickly reach the middle layers, a strange area known as the Forest Cave, where bizarre trees grow right inside the stone. These trees with dark leaves block their vision, making it the perfect territory for stealthy monsters. As Kareem mentions that this wood sells for a high price, a swarm of 12 dog-sized bees, without warning, attacks them from the shadows. While Alice focuses on mixing a bug repellent, Kareem slices the wings off the insects, Cyrus shoots them with mistletoe, and Mist finishes the survivors with a precise beam of holy magic. Meanwhile, inside a B-rank dungeon on the northern border, the disgraced hero Raven is running for his life from a single giant wolf. Even though he is officially an S-rank adventurer, his lack of real training means his actual strength is barely C-rank. He manages to destroy the beast with a light slash from his sword, but he immediately starts complaining to his companions, two noble girls who were also sent to the front lines for their crimes. The girls mock his pathetic stamina, pointing out that he only ever achieved his rank because his family knights did all the heavy lifting. Later, inside a military office, Raven is summoned by the local guildmaster, the army commander, and a priest from the Skill Selection Church. When Raven arrogantly demands more bodyguards and threatens them with his family name, the priest simply laughs and tells him that he has already been replaced. Two men enter, and one of them has a face identical to Raven, having undergone painful surgery to look exactly like the hero. The priest orders the guards to lock the real Raven away, shave his head, and burn his face, so that no one will ever recognize him when he is sent to the front lines as a nameless slave. Cyrus and his team prepare to transition into the undead territory, setting up their camp for the night, back in the worst dungeon. Since normal fire will not stop zombies, Cyrus pulls an energy cube from his clock storage, explaining that its holy power will act as a barrier to keep the monsters away. As the others sleep, Cyrus keeps watch, staring into the dark and reflecting on his past betrayal, realizing that the dungeon has changed him so much that he can never return to a normal life. The next morning, further down in the dungeon, the party encounters mutated flesh golems, dripping with thick, writhing worms. Alice identifies these as the second-generation parasites, and as they go deeper over the next 4 days, the number of infected monsters grows larger. Eventually, they arrive at the end of the layer, standing before an immense door that leads to the boss room. Cyrus pushes the heavy doors open, and from the darkness, a distorted, mocking laugh echoes to greet them. Within the boss room, the dungeon boss stands as a giant tyrant monster, its rotting flesh covered in millions of parasites. But Cyrus, within moments, recognizes the face. It is Brutus Bojack, the corrupt guard captain who framed Cyrus. Reborn as a monster after being killed by the townspeople, Brutus boasts that his hatred for the kingdom transformed him into this beast, allowing him to breed these parasites to destroy humanity. Feeling a surge of cold anger, Cyrus tells his party to stay back, intending to settle this score with his own hands. With a cold smile, Cyrus fires his gun, but Brutus quickly regenerates the holes in his forehead, laughing that he is completely immortal. Cyrus does not hesitate, summoning a new gun sword weapon named Levantane and slicing Brutus's arms into tiny pieces before the monster can even react. Before Brutus can heal, Cyrus cuts open the monster's chest and shoves a holy energy cube deep inside the wound. The pure energy reacts violently against the undead flesh, causing Brutus to scream in agony as his body burns and heals at the same time. For the next several hours, Cyrus unleashes his long-awaited revenge, testing a variety of brutal traps on the self-proclaimed immortal monster. He locks Brutus inside a heavy orichalcum box and heats it with light energy, turning the container into a burning oven that muffles the monster's screams. Next, he chains Brutus's limbs to a system of heavy gears, slowly pulling his body apart until his joints snap, only for the monster's flesh to knit back together. Finally, Cyrus drops him into a pool of strong acid, watching as Brutus's skin melts away and regrows in an endless, agonizing loop, ensuring the former guard captain pays for every single crime he committed. Brutus Bojack cries out for mercy as his mind completely breaks under Cyrus Owen's endless, brutal torture. The broken monster sobs and begs to be killed, but Cyrus shows no mercy, stepping on his head and promising to hunt him down even if he reincarnates. Desperate to end this nightmare, Cyrus activates Aegis of Clockworks, a heavy clockwork armor that encases his body and boosts his magical capacity. He connects his magic gun, Misteltein, directly to the armor and pulls the trigger. A concentrated light bullet of tens of thousands of degrees hits Brutus, burning the monster away until not a single cell remains. Cyrus deactivates his weapon and lets out a sigh, thinking of his deceased friend Miranda by the melted crater. His party members, Kareem Elementius, Alice Owen, and Mist Carmine, step forward to inspect the area. They agree that while the parasite threat is likely gone, they need to search deeper to find the source of Brutus's strange rebirth. There is a sense of unease that someone or something powerful is pulling the strings from the bottom of the dungeon. Refusing to go back to the surface with so many questions left unanswered, they decide to venture into the uncharted depths. Cyrus keeps watch while the others rest. At their campsite later that night, the silence only invites dark thoughts, but Mist emerges from her tent and quietly sits beside him. When she asks about the man he just destroyed, Cyrus admits his deep hatred and worries that she might reject him for his cruel revenge. Instead, Mist smiles gently and confesses that seeing his anger actually makes her feel relieved. She explains that it makes him feel human and that she accepts every part of him, even his darkest feelings. Feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, Cyrus confesses that the revenge left him empty and confused about his own humanity. Mist wraps her arms around him and pulls his head to her chest, whispering that the pain is just a temporary sign of his heart healing. She tells him that once the burden is gone, he will finally be free to live his life. Lying in her warm embrace, Cyrus decides to trust her words and hope for a better future. Mist dreams of her painful past in the slums, deep in her sleep. She never knew her father, and her mother treated her like garbage, leaving the local church as her only comfort. She tried so hard to be a good girl to earn a good skill, but the church branded her a heretic at 16 years old and locked her in a cage. Her mother rejoiced at her arrest, and the priest who once praised her did nothing to help. Mist accepted the lie that she was born bad just to survive being sold into slavery until Cyrus bought her, held her, and promised to protect her. Now, she is determined to support his path, no matter how bloody it gets. The next morning, the party packs up their camp and ventures into a corridor infested with wraiths. These spiritual monsters phase through the solid stone walls, making them nearly impossible to detect with Cyrus's normal skills. However, Mist uses her sanctuary skill to sense the enemies as they enter her aura and feel their power drop. She calls out the location of 2 wraiths approaching from the right wall, while Cyrus spots 3 more ahead. Cyrus fires energy cube bullets from Misteltein, at once vaporizing the 3 in front, while Kareem and Alice handle the rest. With a swift swing of his fiery sword, Kareem slices through the first flanker, while Alice blasts the other with Thunder Rain. The battle is a quick victory, but the constant spellcasting drains a sprawling amount of magic from the 2 fighters. Cyrus, who remains completely unfatigued, realizes his companions need to grow stronger for the dangerous path ahead. He suggests that when they reach the next boss chamber, he will only provide support while the 3 of them take the lead. Everyone agrees, knowing they must step up if they want to survive the deeper layers. Before the gigantic, ominous gates of the boss room, the party stands ready as the doors creak open. Inside the dark, empty chamber, a chilling voice echoes, and the Elder Wraith appears out of thin air. The ghostly boss mockingly warns them that they will go no further, brandishing a wicked staff. Cyrus draws Misteltein and fires a standard metal bullet to show his team that physical attacks simply pass through the specter. The metal bullet does nothing to the boss's smoke-like body, prompting Kareem to leap forward with his Crimson Flame Sword dance. Spurred by Kareem's advance, 3 fiery blades slash at the boss, forcing the monster to dodge in a panic. Alice in seconds triggers her Thunder Rain magic, dropping lightning bolts from a conjured sphere above to trap the wraith in place. Kareem's attack lands directly, making the monster scream in agony as the magical flames burn its spirit body. The Elder Wraith vanishes, intending to possess one of their bodies, but Mist calls upon her sanctuary skill and detects the threat directly overhead. Alice acts immediately, using magic materialization to weave a net of raw magic that entangles the invisible foe. Trapped in the magic net, the Elder Wraith shrieks as Kareem slices through it once more. Mist follows up by firing a barrage of holy arrow spells, piercing the dark spirit with dozens of light projectiles until it dissolves into nothingness. The chamber falls silent, and Mist's sanctuary confirms the monster is truly gone. The group shares a moment of triumph, feeling their levels rise and their confidence grow for the trials ahead. Cyrus congratulates them on their victory, and together, they walk through the newly opened doorway and head down the stairs to the true deep layers. Down in the deep layers, the terrain turns into a chaotic labyrinth of jagged cliffs and flowing spring water. Giant frogs called stone frogs blend perfectly with the rocks, launching their tongue attacks like bullets without warning. Hirim deflects the incoming tongues with his sword, while Cyrus picks off the frogs one by one. Alice freezes the remaining monsters in blocks of ice, using her freeze lock, and Mist protects the party with a barrier. Although the beasts are much tougher than anything they faced before, the team coordinates their efforts perfectly and defeats the ambush. A few weeks later, they reach a grotesque section of the abyss that resembles a living hell. Human-faced monsters crawl through the darkness, alongside stitched insect beasts and writhing masses of raw flesh. Worst of all, they discover glowing green rocks that pulse and grow into human-shaped stone statues with actual human consciousness. The statues beg for death in agonizing voices, only for the dungeon's monsters to tear them apart piece by piece. The most horrifying part is that the exact same statues keep growing back, trapped in an endless loop of torture and murder. Disgusted by the unnatural loop, the group realizes this must be the work of a sinister mind hidden further below. Mist holds Cyrus's hand to comfort him, encouraging him to push past the horror and find the answers they seek. They steel their resolve and continue forward, fighting through the nightmare to reach the absolute bottom of the dungeon. After weeks of traveling through the terrifying abyss, they finally emerge into a monumental opening, only to freeze at the sight of an impossible scene waiting for them. At the dungeon bottom, Cyrus opens a titanic, sacred gate and steps into a polished white stone chamber where a mysterious man stands waiting. The group immediately prepares to fight, but the stranger tells them to wait. He reveals himself as the Judgment God, the deity worshipped by the Skill Selection Church. Knowing their goal, he offers to let them clear the dungeon without a fight, but only if Cyrus, whom he calls the apostle of the Creator's power, submits and serves him. Hirim rejects the offer. Inside the White Room, the Judgment God explains that the human world is too corrupt to be left to humans, so he intends to rule it himself. He reveals that the dungeon is actually a soul prison where the souls of sinners are tortured to force them into a proper shape before rebirth. He even praises Cyrus for vaporizing Brutus Bojack, calling it a perfect act of judgment. The praise triggers deep guilt in Cyrus, who wonders if his revenge was just a selfish act of cruelty. When Cyrus refuses to cooperate, the god decides to eliminate the group and casts a spell called Judgment Cage. In the Nightmare Ruin, Cyrus is sent to a silent, ruined town with no sign of his friends. He tries to locate them using clock detection, but the skill finds nothing. Mutilated, bleeding phantoms begin to materialize and swarm him by the hundreds. They do not attack him physically, but their touch drains his will to live, filling him with intense self-loathing. Believing he is a monster who does not deserve to exist, Cyrus drops his magic gun, Mistletoe, and collapses as the darkness swallows his mind. Cyrus stands completely catatonic while the Judgment God prepares to strike. Back in the White Room, Hirim and Alice launch a coordinated assault, using fire swords and advanced lightning magic to push the deity back. Meanwhile, Mist uses her saintly great person magic on Cyrus, but his soul feels cold and fragile. Realizing she has to reach him directly, Mist uses their deep magic connection to plunge her own consciousness into his mind. Mist finds Cyrus curled up by a rising pool of blood-red liquid created by his own tears inside the Nightmare Ruin. He begs her to let him fade away, believing he is no better than the corrupt people he killed. Mist throws her arms around him, shouting that the world accepts his existence and that she will stay by his side no matter what sins he commits. The intense emotion triggers her slave contract, burning her neck, but she ignores the pain to beg him to return. Touched by her devotion, Cyrus finds his resolve, lifts Mist, and deletes the slave contract's commands entirely. With his mind restored, the phantoms and blood vanish, and they return to reality. Cyrus opens his eyes and summons his heavy clockwork armor, the Aegis of Clockworks, back in the White Room. He creates both Mistletoe and the gun sword Levantine, connecting their power cables to his armor for maximum output. The Judgment God summons a huge light scythe and charges, but Cyrus dodges the strikes and fires high-pressure magic bullets. When the god rants about creating a perfect world, Cyrus retorts that humans are meant to struggle and grow, not be forced into a god's twisted mold. Mist blocks an enormous shockwave with her barrier, allowing Cyrus to close the distance and shoot the deity point-blank in the jaw. With the Judgment God dazed and bleeding, Cyrus summons the Flamberge, which has been upgraded into a towering energy cannon. While the god throws his scythe to stop the attack, Mist blocks the weapon with her barrier, giving Cyrus time to charge. Cyrus fires a colossal beam of energy that vaporizes the god's armor and burns his flesh to ash. The blackened deity still tries to crawl forward, but Cyrus switches his armor to an emergency combat mode and activates a specialized arm weapon called Longinus. He drives a compressed spike of magic straight through the god's skull, ending his life before collapsing from pure exhaustion. In the dream garden, Cyrus wakes up to find a young child sitting at a table. The child reveals himself to be the creator god and explains that after creating the world, he falls into a deep slumber, allowing his 4 sub-deities to steal his power and distort the world. To fight back, the creator god gives Cyrus the unique skill of creation, which the church mistakenly translates as clock user. Because of this error, the god has to modify the power to focus on clockworks, which ultimately allows Cyrus to grow strong enough to slay a god. Now that Cyrus understands the true nature of his power, the creator god prepares to reveal the real reason he summoned him to this garden. Cyrus listens in shock as the creator god asks him to hunt down the remaining 3 sub-deities of this world. Inside the garden, the creator god explains that the sun god, the earth mother god, and the demon god must be defeated to stop them from warping humanity's destiny. These sub-gods were corrupted by the mortal world, trying to force their own versions of a perfect world. The creator god warns that the demon god is already hostile, using the 3 black beasts to cause giant suffering. Before Cyrus can ask more, the garden fades, and the deity promises that the wheels are in motion. With those final words, everything goes white. Cyrus snaps awake at the bottom of the deep hole, deep in the dungeon. Mist is keeping watch, while Kareem and Alice sleep after their battle against the Judgment God. Mist gently offers to take over, leaning against his shoulder to share a quiet moment of comfort. Cyrus holds her close, letting the silence wash over them as they prepare for the final step. The final challenge is already waiting just ahead. At the core room, the party stands before a giant, glowing blue sphere that towers several times higher than a human. This is the dungeon core, and breaking it will slowly collapse the entire labyrinth. The party insists Cyrus should deal the final blow, so he summons his magical gun, Mistletoe, and fires 3 heavy alloy bullets into the sphere. The glass shatters, turning completely dull as the chamber begins to rumble violently. To avoid being swept away by the collapsing space, they quickly run for the exit. Just outside the cave, the group steps into the warm sunlight after their long climb. Kareem and Alice stretch, laughing about how exhausting the adventure was. But since they still need to report their success to the authorities, they head back to Northfolia to deliver the good news. At the guild, the receptionist gasps when Cyrus demands to see the master, running to fetch Gareth Koyage. The guild master leads the party to a private parlor where Lord Demos Northfolia is already waiting. Cyrus lays out the entire truth, explaining the parasitic monsters, the corrupt judgment god, and the secrets revealed by the creator god. Both leaders listen in stunned silence, struggling to process the existence of rogue deities controlling their world. Demos sighs, realizing the scale of the threat, but he has rewards to offer first. Demos explains that he has prepared a grand mansion for Cyrus as part of his promotion to nobility inside the office. To celebrate the clearance of the worst dungeon in history, Demos plans a public parade. Cyrus agrees, knowing the fame will help him recruit servants. What he does not know is that someone very dangerous is already waiting in the crowd. On the street, a huge celebration begins as Cyrus and his companions ride through the cheering crowds on elegant horses. The citizens scream their names, calling them the hero, the saint, the sword saint, and the sage, fully accepting Mist despite her heretical magic. Cyrus smiles at the sight, but his joy vanishes when clock detection picks up an incredibly powerful presence. In the middle of the crowd, a black-haired man stands still, staring at Cyrus with a knowing grin before vanishing. Feeling a chill, Cyrus tries to shake off the encounter and continues waving to the crowd. Back at the mansion, the party returns home, only to find the same black-haired man waiting by the front gate. A young, nervous girl hides behind his back, looking terrified. Cyrus and his friends draw their weapons, demanding to know his identity and how he knows about the creator god. The stranger chuckles, telling them to put their weapons away since he is an ally sent to help defeat the demon god. To prove it, he releases a wave of magic so immense it rivals Cyrus's own power. As they watch in suspicion, the man's disguise magic fades, revealing a pair of fluffy black wolf ears on his head. He introduces himself as a member of the Black Wolf tribe and the ruler of the Rustguard Empire, meaning he is the legendary Demon King himself. The group stands frozen in shock as the Demon King politely asks to step inside to discuss a highly classified mission. Once they are seated, he explains the system of the Demon King's skill, a power that passes down through generations, to create a flawless, unstoppable ruler. Inside the parlor, the Demon King explains that the demon god distributed this power among 3 tribes, creating the 3 black beasts to conquer the world. To destroy this cursed inheritance, Cyrus must conquer 3 specific dungeons tied to the skill before the demon god can renew them. One dungeon lies beneath the castle in the Rusgard Empire, but the other 2 are in foreign territories the Demon King cannot enter, one in the northern mountains of the Hallenberg Kingdom, and the other across the western sea in the country of Night. Cyrus listens intently, but demands to know the Demon King's true motive for betraying his god. Looking down at his young daughter Leona, the Demon King explains that he refuses to let her inherit such a tragic destiny. Leona steps forward, explaining that her dream is to become a pastry chef and make delicious sweets to bring joy to the world. To protect her dream, the Demon King begs Cyrus to let Leona live at his mansion and learn the art of baking. Before Cyrus can even process the request, the Demon King leaps out the window and flies away, leaving his daughter behind. Cyrus can only sigh in disbelief, realizing he has been tricked into babysitting. At the Lord's estate, Cyrus visits Deimos to report the bizarre alliance and arrange a safe cover story for the young Beastman princess. They place Leona as a waitress at a popular local cafe run by a skilled pastry chef from the capital. The townspeople quickly accept her as a harmless refugee, and she happily begins her training in the kitchen. Meanwhile, Cyrus is left with a mountain of paperwork, constantly receiving letters from the Demon King, demanding daily updates about his daughter. The mighty ruler of the empire has turned into an overprotective father, and Cyrus has to write back every single day. Cyrus shakes hands with the Demon King inside the Lord's estate, sealing a hulking alliance that will change the fate of 2 nations. Inside the meeting room, Cyrus, the Demon King, and Lord Deimos lay out their master plan. The Demon King wants Cyrus to clear 3 specific dungeons, keeping the Demon King's skill alive. In exchange, he promises the Empire's full support for Northfolia's independence. Deimos points out that Cyrus must first head to the royal capital to officially receive his noble title. From there, he will act as an envoy to negotiate a peace treaty with the Rustgard Empire, boosting his reputation. Once that is done, he will target the dungeon at the Dragon's Nest, establish connections with the western city-states, and finally conquer the dungeon in the Country of Night. They all know the skill selection church, and hostile nobles will try to stop them, but Cyrus is ready for the challenge. Meanwhile, on the war-torn front lines, a scarred and unrecognizable slave soldier screams in absolute despair. This is Raven, the disgraced former hero once known as Blackheart, who has been sent to the deadliest battlefield as raw meat. His head has been shaved and his skin burned to hide his identity, while a double plays the hero back home. When a powerful demon officer launches a spear that blows off a nearby slave's head, Raven flees in terror. By sheer luck, he trips over a corpse just as a spear grazes his neck, shattering his slave collar without killing him. Realizing he is free, Raven uses his restricted Brave Slash to blind the demons and runs into the wilderness, escaping the front lines. Cyrus prepares for his journey to the capital, back at the Lord's estate. Instead of taking a regular carriage, he steps into the garden and uses clock creation to summon a vast magic vehicle called Fafnir. Lord Deimos stares in shock at the giant self-moving carriage, which looks like a luxury automobile. While normal magic cars require rare, expensive mana stones to run, Cyrus easily powers the entire vehicle using his own colossal magic reserve. On the road, the Wheel of Fate party enjoys a surprisingly comfortable journey. Kareem takes the driver's seat of Fafnir, while Alice helps monitor the controls, and Mist prepares meals in the built-in kitchen. Thanks to space-expanding magic, the car's interior is as large as a house, complete with sleeping space for up to 8 people. Meanwhile, Cyrus zooms around the vehicle on a custom magic motorcycle called Flesvelg, which he built for scouting. When a pack of fast-running wolves chases him, Cyrus leaps into the air, summons his magic gun Misteltein to shoot them all in the forehead, and lands perfectly back on his seat. At the Capital Adventurer Guild, the group arrives after a swift day and a half of travel. Inside the Guildmaster's office, Cyrus immediately bows and forces his sister Alice to do the same, offering to pay for the damage she caused when she previously blew up the building. The Guildmaster Bartold, who is also Alice's adoptive father, is deeply impressed by Cyrus's humble attitude, despite being an SSS-Rank adventurer. Barthold accepts their apology, welcomes them warmly, and promises to arrange a high-class inn and schedule a meeting with Earl Beaumont. In the guild reception room, Cyrus meets Earl Beaumont the following afternoon. The Earl is thrilled to see him, praising Cyrus's clockmaking skills because the clock he repaired is still running flawlessly. He warns Cyrus that the kingdom's nobles are divided, with the pro-church reformists holding a 7-3 majority over the conservatives. The reformists view Cyrus as a dangerous wildcard and will almost certainly set a trap for him during his upcoming noble ceremony. Cyrus steels himself for the danger, but his heart sinks when the Earl reveals that his mother, Serena, quit her job at the estate shortly after Cyrus's arrest, and her current location is completely unknown. Cyrus searches frantically for any sign of his mother deep in the slums. He uses clock detection to search for the unique clock he once gifted her, hoping she still has it. The skill leads him to a ruined alley, but instead of his mother, he finds a filthy, starving old man. The man abruptly recognizes Cyrus and attacks him in a fit of rage, screaming about how unique skill holders ruined his life. Cyrus pins the raging old man to the ground, but seeing Ro's helpless fury only reminds him of his own dark days at the bottom of the worst dungeon. Cyrus pins a raging Ro Shordock to the muddy ground of a dark slum alleyway, demanding to know why the man spent years expelling unique skill holders. The ruined former guildmaster only spits back excuses, claiming he wanted to destroy the unfair system that favors special skills over hard work. But Cyrus points out that Ro simply let his own greed ruin him. Before their argument can go any further, a group of armed thugs surrounds them. Leading the gang is Colin Shordock, Ro's son, who flashes a greedy grin and announces they are going to capture Cyrus and sell him to illegal slave traders for a fortune. As the thugs charge, Cyrus uses clock creation to summon his magic pistols, Misteltein. A rapid burst of magic bullets echoes through the narrow street, and just like that, the thugs collapse with shattered knees. Cyrus does not stop there, landing precise shots to the legs of both Ro and Colin to stop them from running. He tosses 2 silver coins to a brave young onlooker, asking the boy to run and fetch the guards. Desperate and bleeding, Ro pulls out a forbidden explosive magic tool to blow everyone to pieces, but Cyrus shoots the man's hand off and uses clock manipulation to safely dismantle the device before it can detonate. Ustarred, Cyrus escorts the young boy back to his home to protect him from any vengeful thugs down the street. The boy leads him to the ruins of a church where a group of orphans has taken shelter. Near a small vegetable patch in the yard, a woman stands with her back turned, working the soil. The boy calls out to her, and when she turns around, Cyrus freezes in absolute shock. Standing right there is his missing mother, Serena Owen. Serena runs over with tears streaming down her face and pulls her son into a tight hug inside the churchyard. She explains that after Cyrus was arrested, she quit her job at the Beaumont estate and fled to the slums, where a kind former nun helped her find work caring for these orphans. Cyrus wants to take his mother away to a safer place, but he knows the orphans will starve without her. He decides to fund an immense training program to turn these kids into clean, educated servants for his future mansion. Later, at the Adventurer Guild, Cyrus meets with the guildmaster, Barthold, to pitch his new charity. Barthold agrees to handle the paperwork using Cyrus's endless supply of gold coins. But he also hands over an unexpected message. The head of the Florence commerce firm, Ro Florence, is demanding an urgent face-to-face meeting. This is the father of Cyrus's ex-fiancée, the disgraced Saint Maria Florence, and he has a serious grudge. Back at the inn, Cyrus fills in his party, and his sister Alice Owen immediately throws a temper tantrum about meeting the family who betrayed them. Kareem Elementius and Mist Carmine try to calm her down, but they all agree to go along to keep an eye on things. That night, Kareem notices Cyrus staring at his hands in silence, worried that his attempts to change society might actually make things worse. Kareem gently reassures him, and Cyrus realizes that his true goal is not to fight the system, but to make sure the people he loves can live happily. Filled with sudden gratitude, he wraps Kareem in a tight hug, leaving the fierce desert warrior blushing red. The next morning, inside the guild meeting room, Cyrus and his party sit across from a stern Ro Florence. Alice immediately tries to pick a fight, but Kareem holds her back, explaining that Cyrus and Gro are already testing each other with subtle words. Gro gets straight to the point, asking Cyrus to sell his rare dungeon materials directly to his firm. Cyrus flatly refuses, stating he will not show any favoritism to the man who abandoned him. Gro's expression turns grim as he brings up the real reason for his visit, across the table. His daughter, Maria, has been exiled to a remote convent in the dangerous dragon's territory, and she is slowly dying of regret for not believing in Cyrus. Gro begs him to go to the convent and break her lingering attachment so she can find peace. But Alice screams that they owe the Florence family nothing. Gro coldly retorts that Cyrus's weakness is what caused Maria's downfall in the first place, leaving the room in a heavy, painful silence. Cyrus tells a furious Alice that he cannot accept Gro's request, but he refuses to hate the man either. Back in the hallway, he recognizes that Gro was just a desperate father trying to protect his child, and he does not want to waste his life on useless revenge. Mist and Kareem quickly promise to stand by him no matter what, and even Alice agrees to follow his lead. Back at the inn, Kareem decides to give Alice a crash course on the history of the Hallenberg Kingdom to keep her from causing a scene during the upcoming noble ceremony. Using silly hats and handwritten signs, Cyrus, Kareem, and Mist act out the long history of the kingdom, explaining how the nobles and the skill selection church have been fighting for power for decades. They warn Alice that if they openly attack the church now, the common people who rely on daily magic will turn against them. Alice groans but promises to behave, leaving Cyrus to worry about what will happen when they finally face the king at the upcoming ceremony. Cyrus steps into the grand throne room of the royal palace, wearing formal noble clothes and preparing to face the king. Alongside Mist, Kareem, and Alice, he kneels before the throne to receive his rewards for conquering the worst dungeon. The king officially grants Cyrus the title of Viscount and rewards the party with 10,000 gold coins. When asked how he plans to serve the kingdom, Cyrus drops a bombshell by declaring that he wants to lead a peace delegation to the Rustgard Empire. The entire room goes quiet, but Cyrus explains that his status as a dungeon conqueror makes him the ultimate deterrent, forcing the empire to either talk peace or look like the aggressors. The king is impressed and officially appoints him as the envoy, which leaves the cardinal of the skill selection church staring him down in absolute fury. In a private waiting room, Alice asks why the church leader looked so angry. Cyrus and his team explain that the skill selection church thrives on war because it makes people depend on the combat skills the church distributes. Shortly after, the grand garden party begins out in the palace courtyard. The former queen, Olivia Lutetia Hallenberg, is the first to greet Cyrus, expressing her regret that the Craftsman Guild ruined her beloved ancient clock. Cyrus promises to fix it for her, but their warm reunion is cut short when the angry cardinal approaches them, claiming Cyrus's achievements only happened because of the skills granted by their god. Cyrus stands his ground, declaring that trust and willpower cleared the dungeon, not just raw skills, leaving the priest to storm off in silence. Near the end of the party, the king announces Cyrus's upcoming peace mission to the crowd. The cardinal all at once interrupts, demanding that Cyrus prove he actually has the strength to match the Demon King. Cyrus just smiles and tells everyone to look up. Using clock creation, he summons Muspelheim, a giant mechanical sphere that rises high into the sky. It releases a cloud of light-absorbing particles that immediately plunges the palace courtyard into near-total darkness, leaving a glowing energy cloud swirling overhead. Cyrus calmly explains that this weapon can absorb the light and release it to melt the entire capital to ashes. Terrified by this display of godlike power, the cardinal begs him to stop, and Cyrus obliges, banishing the weapon in a flash. Back at the cathedral, the cardinal slams his fists in rage and refuses to let Cyrus undermine the church's authority. He leads his priests deep into the subterranean vaults, heading straight for a forbidden divine seal. Despite the warnings of his followers, the cardinal grabs the ancient artifact containing Behemoth, a legendary monster capable of destroying the world. He plans to release the beast to clash with Cyrus, hoping the two forces will destroy each other so the church's elite forces can clean up the survivor. The priests hesitate at the thought of sprawling civilian casualties, but the cardinal convinces them that any sacrifice is justified to protect the Holy Order. 2 days later, in Olivia's private chambers, Cyrus begins repairing her ruined six-faced clock. Inside the mechanism, he finds a total disaster with warped frame pieces and shattered gears. Using clock manipulation, he begins reshaping the damaged Orihalcum parts, relying on his perfect memory to recreate the exact layout he saw during his first visit. He carefully restores the insect-shaped gear that had been ruined by the Craftsman Guild. Olivia is amazed by his dedication and asks him to become the new master of the Craftsman Guild to help cure the kingdom's cultural stagnation, but Cyrus declines, explaining that he has other paths to pursue. Once the clock starts ticking again, showing the movements of the sun and moon, Olivia breaks down in tears of joy, explaining that the clock was a wedding gift keeping her connected to her lost homeland. Seeing her passion, Cyrus invites her to join their party as an adventurer. He explains that, as his clock user skill grows stronger, its conceptual power will eventually allow him to manipulate biological clocks, meaning he could restore her youth and physical peak. Olivia is shocked but deeply tempted, promising to give him her final answer when he returns. A few days later, Cyrus and his companions board their magical carriage, Fafnir, and speed toward the eastern border. Cyrus's quiet night of rest on the road to the eastern border quickly turns chaotic when his companions start fighting to sleep in his bed. Inside the carriage, Alice out of nowhere demands to sleep next to him, which quickly prompts Mist and Kareem to request the same. Cyrus realizes Alice is just feeling insecure about being left behind as a sister, while Cyrus pursues a romantic relationship with Mist. Gently stroking her hair, Cyrus reassures Alice that he loves all three of them in different ways, promising they will slowly build their relationship without any rush. Reassured, Alice relaxes, and the four of them spend the night squeezed together in the carriage. At the fort gates, the party arrives at the east border fort the following day. A guard challenges them, but Cyrus shows his SSS rank adventurer card and national crest to secure entry. Within the war room, they meet the fort commander, the local guildmaster, and a priest from the skill selection church. Cyrus notices a silent bodyguard standing behind the priest, and his clock detection skill registers a strange magic item embedded in the man's face. The priest explains that this man is a double for Raven Crowheart. The real Raven had his face ruined and eventually died on the front lines as a slave after his collar was broken. With the commander wanting Cyrus gone quickly, the priest in an instant asks Cyrus to use his mass destruction weapon to wipe out the demon army. Cyrus flatly refuses, reminding them that he is a peace messenger, before leaving to prepare for departure. Out on the border, the group crosses into demon territory and is met by Baal Zephon, a purple-skinned demon commander. Baal recognizes Cyrus from the Demon King's messages and offers to guide them to the castle. But before they can leave, a spy sent by the Skill Selection Church rushes toward them, carrying a glowing artifact. The spy shouts that Cyrus is a traitor to humanity and sacrifices his own life force to activate the tool. The artifact tears a gigantic rift in the sky, and a 30-meter-tall monster with scales, tusks, and giant horns emerges. It is Behemoth, a legendary beast of destruction. Behemoth lets out a deafening roar that sends destructive shockwaves through both armies. On the battlefield, knowing they cannot beat it quickly in a direct fight, Cyrus decides to summon a monumental weapon using clock creation, which requires time to build. He sends Alice to force the kingdom's soldiers to retreat, while Mist and Kareem stay to stall the beast. Cyrus then runs to Baal Zephon, who is preparing to lead a suicidal charge to protect the border. Cyrus grabs the demon commander and convinces him that throwing away his soldiers' lives is pointless. Baal agrees to order a retreat, sending his main force back while he joins Mist and Kareem. Near the monster, Kareem uses her flame sword dance, and Baal uses his unique penetration skill to pierce Behemoth's thick hide. However, the monster's wounds heal almost right away. Behemoth opens its titanic jaws, gathering energy for a destructive beam of light. Mist casts multiple barriers, but the power is too great. Just as the beam fires, Alice returns and casts a reflection spell alongside Mist. Together, they redirect the huge laser straight into the sky, slicing the clouds in half. In a distant clearing, Cyrus focuses his magic on a giant circle on the ground, summoning a 36-meter-tall mechanical giant called Deus Ex Magientica. Cyrus boards the machine, connecting his Aegis of Clockwork's armor to the controls, allowing the giant to mirror his movements. Back on the battlefield, the mechanical giant flies in on 6 powerful thrusters. Cyrus grabs Behemoth and drags the beast far away into the empty wilderness to prevent any casualties. In the deep wilderness, Cyrus shifts the giant into close combat mode, focusing thruster energy into his metal claws to slice deep into Behemoth's neck. In response, Behemoth encases itself in a thick layer of rock armor. Cyrus quickly shifts to cannon mode, combining all 6 thrusters into a single arm cannon to fire a compressed blast of magic. The explosion shatters the stone armor and leaves Behemoth heavily burned and bleeding. Enraged, Behemoth launches a barrage of its own razor-sharp scales, but Cyrus shifts to footwork mode, sliding across the ground to dodge the projectiles before landing a crushing kick that breaks the monster's neck. Despite the heavy damage, Behemoth slowly stands back up, glaring with red eyes as it begins gathering an enormous amount of energy for one last attack. Cyrus watches Behemoth closely through the sensors of Deus Ex Magientica. Knowing the beast is preparing a final, desperate breath attack that could wipe out the entire area, he switches the mechanical giant to flying mode, sending it soaring high into the sky. Behemoth fires its maximum power breath upward, but Cyrus immediately shifts to the dead-end mode. He detaches all 6 thrusters, links them to the giant right arm, and begins a high-speed freefall. The compressed magic of his dead-end nails collides with the towering energy beam, creating a space distortion that tears the breath attack apart. With one final push, Cyrus drives the giant metal claws straight through Behemoth's head, completely neutralizing the threat. Right after the strike, the overloaded engine inside the giant shatters. The resulting magical backlash triggers a spatial reaction that turns both Behemoth's body and the giant's right arm into sparkling particles of light. Down on the ground, Kareem, Mist, Alice, and Baal look up at the beautiful, starlit sky as the remains of the monster vanish. Watching from the distant east border fort, the soldiers of the kingdom celebrate their survival, naming the mysterious machine the Meteor Giant. The demon soldiers in the Empire cheer just as loudly, feeling a strange sense of gratitude toward the metal savior that saved them all. Near the battlefield, a group of suspicious scouts tries to slip away under the cover of the dust. However, Kareem, Mist, and Alice quickly surround them from three sides, cutting off their escape. When the scouts attempt to backtrack, they run directly into Baal, who is already waiting with his spear raised. Realizing these are the church-affiliated culprits who summoned the monster, Baal easily overwhelms them and declares they will be taken as prisoners of war. Cyrus deactivates his giant armor and searches the area for any lingering danger over on the ruined plains. Right where the monster's body collapsed, he finds a strange, egg-shaped rock floating in the air. When he taps it with his finger, the rock cracks open, and out pops a tiny, fluffy creature that looks like a round, helpless sheep with two tiny horns. Through a telepathic skill, the creature reveals that it is actually Behemoth itself. Having lost 8 of its 9 lives to Cyrus's final attack, the legendary beast chose to shrink into a harmless pet to avoid being killed. Amused but cautious, Cyrus decides to keep the creature, and Mist happily names the fluffy ball Pippo. A few days later, the party travels deeper into the Rustguard Empire inside Fafnir, the self-moving carriage. While Mist tries to feed a very reluctant Pippo some bitter wild berries, Alice sits in the passenger seat writing notes. She explains that since they cannot use the hulking giant inside cramped dungeons, she is developing a new magic theory. Her idea is to create a system that allows all party members to pool their mana and transfer it to Cyrus for a vast power boost. Cyrus is impressed by her dedication, hoping she can turn the concept into a real combat tool. Upon arriving at a small frontier village, Baal negotiates with the local chief for supplies. The chief agrees, but begs for help in dealing with a group of violent bandits made of former kingdom slaves who are terrorizing the area. Baal agrees to wipe them out, but as they walk through the streets, a local beastman child intentionally trips Baal into a puddle of mud. Baal calmly brushes it off, explaining to Cyrus that these minority tribes hate both the kingdom and the empire. This is exactly why the empire uses a district system to keep them far from the borders, providing them with food to slowly put out the embers of war. Out in the nearby forest, Alice uses an advanced tracking spell that combines fire and wind magic to pinpoint the exact location of the bandit camp. The party slips through the trees and launches a sudden ambush on the unsuspecting camp. The bandit leader, a man with a horribly burned face known as Rotting Face, tries to draw his sword to activate a powerful skill. But before he can even raise his weapon, Cyrus fires Mistletoe, blowing the leader's head clean off. The rest of the bandits are eliminated within seconds, and Mist uses her holy flame to turn the remains into dust. Soon after the skirmish, the party finally reaches the grand gates of the imperial capital, Carabistera. Walking through the crowded streets, Cyrus is amazed by the chaotic mix of architectural styles, which Baal explains is a result of different beastmen tribes living together. They stop by a shop run by an elderly white fox beastman, who shows them traditional charms used by the bear tribe for safety. After taking in the sights, they head toward the colossal castle gates, which Cyrus realizes is actually the entrance to a giant dungeon. Inside the throne room, the Demon King welcomes Cyrus and proposes a formal alliance before beginning peace talks with Hallenberg. To make the agreement official, they move to a large meeting room to hold a council with the 12 faith generals. One of the generals, an immense red-skinned demon named Abel, demands proof of Cyrus's strength, but Baal quickly silences the doubts by guaranteeing Cyrus is stronger than anyone in the room. Then, a cat beastman general named Mary asks about the true purpose of this alliance, prompting the Demon King to explain the benefits of sharing technology and presenting a united front. During the debate, a white fox general named Rox strongly objects to the idea of importing kingdom technology, fearing it will destroy the unique cultures of the minority tribes. Cyrus speaks up, arguing that integrating early is actually the best way to preserve their identity, and reveals that Northfolia intends to use this alliance to declare independence from the kingdom's corrupt church system. When Rox demands excessive laws to protect his people, the Demon King warns him that special treatment only leads to isolation and the death of true culture. Silence falls over the room as Rox backs down, realizing the wisdom in their words. Cyrus finishes his meeting with the Demon King and the generals, and every single one of his proposals is officially approved. Not only do they secure a formal alliance and support for Northfolia's independence, but they also get permission to clear the dungeon inside the Demon King's castle. Since the castle is actually just the entrance to the dungeon, clearing it won't collapse the building, but it will prevent a deadly monster outbreak. Back at the guest room, the group is relaxing when a knock sounds at the door. The Cat Beastman General Mary, still disguised as a maid, brings in the White Fox General Rox, who asks Cyrus to follow him outside. Cyrus agrees, kicking a fluffy sheep-like Pippo back into the room when the little pet tries to sneak along. Rox leads Cyrus to a shop displaying traditional White Fox crafts, out on the quiet night streets. Inside the dark shop, Rox explains that his tribe once used illusion and curse magic, utilizing these crafts as magical weapons. However, once the Demon King united the tribes and brought peace, people abandoned the long, doubtful years of training in favor of simple combat magic, leaving only powerless ornaments behind. Rox admits he wanted the Demon King to fund his tribe to save their dying culture, but a voice from the back of the shop interrupts them. An old white fox woman, who happens to be Rox's grandmother and the shopkeeper, walks out and physically smacks Rox's head for acting like a spoiled child. She tells her grandson that true inheritance means adapting to the times, not begging for handouts to keep useless, unchanged customs alive. To prove her point, she asks Cyrus to imagine a venomous bug crawling on his skin, causing him to shiver, and then trips him with a tiny spark of magic. Even with Cyrus's sprawling stats, he falls flat on the floor, proving that her clever manipulation of human senses is far more effective than brute force. She explains that she modified the ancient curse techniques so the tribe's youth could learn them easily to survive in war. Cyrus stands up, shakes Rox's hand, and promises that even if the tribe's name fades in the future, the spirit of what they passed down will live on through their alliance. Back at the guest room, Cyrus receives a warm welcome from his party, giving head pats to Mist and Alice, while thanking Kareem with a tight hug for keeping their logistics in order. The next morning, Mary leads Cyrus to the castle's gigantic chapel. When Cyrus questions why she is working as a maid, Mary proudly claims she is the secret 13th member of the 12 Faith Generals, simply because it sounds cool, leaving Cyrus to quietly give up on understanding her. Inside the chapel, they face a colossal pipe organ with over 30,000 pipes, some stretching 20 meters high. This instrument is the key to opening the dungeon, but it has been silent for centuries, and no one has ever managed to fix it. Taking on the challenge, Cyrus spends the next few weeks dismantling and inspecting the complex mechanism. During his work, a skull-masked general named General Skullmask repeatedly stops by to loudly criticize Cyrus's tool safety and pipe placement. Instead of arguing, Cyrus humbly accepts the feedback and adjusts his methods, which eventually softens the general's attitude. General Skullmask admits that Cyrus's quiet dedication reminds him of his late nephew, a peaceful musician who was slaughtered alongside an entire village by kingdom soldiers 10 years ago. Cyrus listens to the man's grief and quietly prays for the victims, finding a sense of peace that helps him focus entirely on the machine. Back at the guest room, after another long day of failed tests, Cyrus watches Pippo accidentally sink and struggle in a shallow pet bath. As Mist rescues the wet, dizzy sheep, Cyrus realizes that sound struggles to travel between different materials, like water and air. This realization sparks the answer to the pipe organ's silence. The next day, by the organ, Cyrus explains his theory to the Demon King. The modern wind machine they used was an artificial magic item, which made the wind heavy and sticky like water when it hit the ancient magical control sliders. Because this thick wind mixed unevenly with normal air inside the pipes, it completely blocked the vibrations needed to make sound. Since the dungeon automatically repairs original parts, Cyrus deduces that the genuine, non-magical bellows must still exist somewhere in the castle. Sure enough, the castle staff searches the grounds and finds the giant original bellows sitting forgotten in an old abandoned forge. Once they reinstall the ancient bellows, Mary pumps the air, while the Demon King plays a song using the musical memories of his inherited skill. The beautiful melody fills the chapel, and the giant stained glass window slowly transforms into a swirling portal of pure darkness. At the portal, Cyrus, Mist, Alice, Kareem, and Pippo jump directly into the abyss. They descend a monumental spiral staircase, going deep underground, finding no traps or monsters along the way. At the bottom of the stairs, they pass through a heavy iron gate designed to keep something locked inside. Waiting in the chamber is a goat-headed deity known as the Demon God, standing right in front of a giant glowing dungeon core. The Demon God calmly asks the group to step down, arguing that a unified world ruled by a perfect, absolute king is the only way to end human conflict. Kareem and Alice immediately reject his logic, pointing out that absolute rule only creates forced compliance and quiet suffering. Cyrus draws his weapons, declaring that even if humans make mistakes, choosing their own path and fighting for their own future is far better than bowing to a self-righteous god. Cyrus flatly rejects the demon god's offer of a peaceful world ruled by an absolute leader down in the chamber. He argues that conflict, while painful, is exactly what drives people to grow and connect with each other. Realizing that words will not sway these adventurers, the demon god decides to end their defiance right here. He steps back and channels his divine power directly into the giant glowing dungeon core. The core begins to shift and crack, absorbing all the energy of the dungeon until it transforms into a towering guardian. Calling it Diablo, a 3-meter-tall humanoid weapon covered in crystalline armor, the demon god orders it to kill them all before vanishing into thin air. In front of the core, the titanic crystalline monster slowly steps forward with a mechanical screech. Cyrus wastes no time and fires a barrage from his magical gun, Mistletoe, but the bullets bounce off the creature's thick shell without leaving a single scratch. Alice steps up next, unleashing a huge explosion of fire, followed by a blast of absolute zero ice that completely freezes the beast. But as the ice shatters, Diablo emerges completely unharmed, rapidly healing the few tiny cracks on its armor. Before they can plan their next move, the monster charges at them with terrifying speed. Mist throws up a protective barrier, but Diablo smashes right through it like wet paper. Hoping to redirect the charge, Cyrus uses clock creation to in an instant summon his heavy magic motorcycle, Blesvelg, directly into the monster's path. The vehicle is smashed to pieces, but the impact successfully diverts Diablo's charge, sending it crashing into the stone wall. Hippo warns Cyrus that this beast is almost as strong as he was in his prime, meaning they cannot afford to take a single hit. Knowing they need a miracle, Alice asks Kareem to buy her some time. Kareem leaps forward and activates her flame sword dance, summoning 6 flaming swords that spin around her before slamming into the ground to trap Diablo inside a wall of fire. Alice pulls out 2 bracelet-like magic devices with large magic stones set in the center, near the edge of the fight. She explains that these are unison controllers, prototypes that are only 90% complete, and tells Cyrus and Mist that they will have to fill in the remaining 10% with their trust in each other. Without giving them a second to argue, Alice snaps the left bracelet onto Cyrus's wrist and the right one onto Mist's. With Diablo already breaking through Kareem's firewall, Cyrus and Mist stand side by side, press their bracelets together, and shout the activation phrase to install the magic. Right in the middle of the room, a flash of blinding golden light pulls Cyrus and Mist together and fuses them into a single warrior. When the light fades, a tall, short-haired warrior named Starlight stands in their place, holding an enormous hammer that is taller than her own body. Alice explains that because Cyrus and Mist had their souls linked during their previous battle with the Judgment God, this device allows them to combine their powers into one ultimate form. Starlight smiles with a confidence that Mist would never show, feeling the immense energy coursing through her veins. Back on the stone floor, Diablo charges forward again, but this time, Starlight effortlessly catches the monster's heavy fist with a single hand. She mocks the beast, kicking it across the room with enough force to shatter its crystal armor against the far wall. Diablo tries to use its extreme speed to circle around her, but Starlight easily tracks its movements, hitting it with a heavy back fist before slamming it onto the ground and breaking its leg. With the monster pinned, Starlight activates the full power of her giant hammer, turning it into a jet-boosted rocket spike that she slams directly into Diablo's chest. Without warning, the golden light returns and splits Cyrus and Mist back into 2. Alice apologizes, explaining that the fusion only lasts for a very short time and has a 30-minute cooldown. Seeing the monster's scattered parts slowly trying to crawl back together to regenerate, everyone unleashes their strongest magic to keep it down. Kareem throws her flaming swords, Alice uses elemental magic, and Mist fires holy stars, but the stubborn monster still refuses to die. From across the room, Cyrus activates his Aegis of Clockwork's armor and switches it to its new Magientica style, which attaches thrusters powered by 6 miniature magic fusion reactors to his back. He summons his giant Flamberge cannon and connects it to the thrusters to charge up a towering blast of energy, while the others use their magic to bind the monster. Diablo tries to squeeze out of the trap, but Alice kicks Pippo right under the beast's foot, causing it to slip and fall. With the monster down, Cyrus fires a giant beam of dark energy that completely vaporizes Diablo and carves a deep line through the dungeon wall. As the remaining dust dissolves into light, Cyrus raises his fist in victory, marking the end of the dungeon boss.